there. So I am Elizabeth Calhoun. I am the ISTE Professional Development Coordinator for the Special Interest Group of Innovative Learning Technology, which is a mouthful. Basically, I'm a volunteer who tries to get people onto our webinar schedule. If you are interested in getting more information about the ISTE SIG Innovative Learning Technologies, then you are welcome to come to onetoolatatime.wikispaces.com. I'll post that link in our resources in the comments of the final YouTube video. So with no further ado, we only have 30 minutes, now 29 because I'm such a chatterbox. We've got Alice Keeler here, and wonderful, wonderful woman who is going to talk to us a little bit about gaming and education, and hopefully this is helpful and useful. And Alice, why don't you introduce yourself and take it away?
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Alice Keeler. I taught high school math for 14 years, and in various ways I played games and did different gaming simulations in my classroom, but I really got into games when I started my master's degree, where we started playing World of Warcraft and different things, and really started to see how that can make a real impact on learning. So I'm actually going to be starting my doctorate in the fall at Boise State, and this is a field that I'm going to be looking into, is gamification to increase student motivation. So I'm going to go ahead and do some screen sharing here. All right. And so if you'd like to look at the slide deck, it is goo.gl/9 capital X lowercase I lowercase v and the number 5. You can find me on Twitter at Alice Keeler, and I blog at alicekeeler.com. I'll go to the next slide. So what we're looking at here is there's really two kinds of things that people tend to mix up, which is games versus gamification. So gamification is gaming mechanics applied to a non-game situation. So a lot of times people think they're doing gamification when they play games. I think it's pretty popular for teachers to play games in their classrooms, at least to some extent. But gamification is actually something different. And so some things that you can look at for gamification is when we do points or XP, but not necessarily points like I give points on a homework assignment, but you do this in ways more like as a reward or an award system. XP being from video games, you usually think about the points that you earn in a video game. We call it XP, but it's just points, experience points. Other things that you might find in gamification is choice, like how can you give choice to students? That's something you'll see when you play games, is a lot of times there's more than one way to tackle the task. A lot of times they'll start easily and gradually get more difficult. Something that you notice about school is with grades we go from level 1 being an F, and to get from an F to a D you have to jump 60%. But yet in most games you start at level 1 and you go to level 2, and that jump from level 1 to level 2 is usually pretty easy. And so you build success on success. So I know I can get to the next level because I was successful at the previous level. A low risk of failure. I think we don't have enough failure in school. We give kids a test or homework assignment, and it's fairly definitive, and it's almost punitive. Like you did bad on it and lives in the grade book forever. But when you look at a game, you know, when you don't kill the bad guy, usually you get to try it again. I was watching my son play a video game, and he starts the level and he kind of learns, fails, and doesn't even finish the level. He just starts it over. So he's learning from his failures. So this can really be something that can motivate students. So looking at how we can reduce failure, the risk of failure, to encourage students to try more often. I think most people think of achievements and badges when they think of gamification. That is part of a solution of gamification, but I really get picky that is not the solution. But it's definitely a good entry point for getting into doing gamification in your classroom. And I think this is really important. Something that you can do is just put a story or a narrative around whatever it is that you're doing. Instead of the task being, we're going to build a bridge, it's that you and your classmates are stuck on an island and the volcano is about to erupt and you need to build a bridge so you can run away and get safely away from the volcano. So it's still the same task of building a bridge, but you put a little purpose into it and some narrative and a story, and it really makes it a lot more fun and engaging.
Quick question, Alice.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes a lot of teachers get really sort of a creativity freak out, where like you just threw out that great example, and people will sometimes freak out that, you know, well, I can't come up with a creative example like that. Is there stuff out there that sort of sets the stage, or some primers for scenarios that you know of, or how do you make that transition from, you know, sort of this very standardized based system that we have now to stories?
That's a great question. I'm sure that there's lots of resources out there. I think my best resource is, of course, something like Twitter or some sort of social network or place where you get together with other teachers to brainstorm and collaborate, because obviously your curriculum is very specific, so you want to find other people who are doing some of the same things. I really want to encourage teachers to understand that low risk of failure for students needs to apply to teachers also, is that it's okay to like try something, throw it out, say I'm going to make up a story, and then it doesn't work. Don't beat yourself up about it. You know, the kids really do appreciate the effort, and sometimes they'll jump in and like, you know how this could have been better, is we should have done it like this. And so just kind of giving it a start and then throwing the challenge out to students to help you to build the story, I think can really help. And really just starting small. Like, I can make a story around one small task and kind of see how that builds on it. It doesn't have to be an epic semester-long story, although I have this theory that you could teach anything with a year-long Dungeons and Dragons session, just because the whole premise of that is fantasy and storytelling about overcoming a challenge. So that could really apply to any subject, and so you could do it as some epic journey, but that doesn't have to be what it's about. Doing it in small chunks as a small task, as is what we're doing today, can really be accessible for teachers. And if you look at just some of your favorite books, where the Wild Things are, the Hunger Games, some of these different things where there's already kind of a story built in, and then you frame that in your class. So it's like, do you give a mouse a cookie, right? That's a really popular book. Start with that story and then figure out how you could make that story that already exists, that students are familiar with, and that common shared experience will really help invite them into what the learning is, because they already feel comfortable with the storyline. And then you just kind of game it around, you know, changing some of the rules or some of the applications around what they already know. So I think that those are easy ways to do that.
Thank you. Rob, I just muted you just for the sake of staying on a particular screen, but if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to unmute yourself whenever you need to, okay?
Please do. Totally not rude or anything. I'd love to hear your questions and feedback. So going with a story or a narrative, and then really looking at mastery. So when I play World of Warcraft or Angry Birds or any other game, most of the time I need to master something. There's some task I need to overcome. That's where that low risk of failure really comes in, but I don't get the points if I don't kill the bad guy, you know? And so I think gamification helps us to come away from the mode where we are having students take a test and saying, oh, didn't do good on chapter 4, too bad. Good luck with chapter 5. And it's like, wait a minute, wasn't chapter 4 important? So looking at some of the things we can learn from playing a video game is how we want to master things before we move on. And we don't want to move on before a kid has mastered it. And there's different ways that you can implement that. And of course, you're always looking at what's reasonable and doable versus the theory, but that's one element. And this is, I think, one of the biggest ones is the importance of feedback. So in a game, you pretty much always know where you're at. There's some sort of a scoring system. As I am playing, things will pop up on the screen to tell me how many points I'm earning, to tell me what my next task is. I get this immediate feedback. And that's something that's really important for student motivation, is the idea of the more immediate and personalized the feedback, the more motivating it is for them. So when we play games and there's some sort of a built-in feedback system or some way that you are giving feedback to the students A lot of times you'll see we play games in class, we do some sort of point scoreboard. That in itself is a form of feedback, or we are playing it together as a class and we're telling the students on the spot if they got it right or wrong. Just the fact that they get that instant gratification motivates them, which would explain why they're a lot more interested in playing our Jeopardy game in class than necessarily doing their homework at home. Because at home, when they write down the right answer or the wrong answer, there's not necessarily that feedback system to give them a pat on the back. So, switch back to the screen sharing. So when we're looking at games, I want you to think about how do they really fit into your classroom. And really, they should be for a purpose and not just for fun. So why are you playing the game? What learning objective are you trying to accomplish? What do you want the students to get out of it? And why do you think that framing it in a game is going to create a better learning environment? Obviously, having fun in itself is motivating and more engaging. And if the students are more engaged, they're more likely to remember it. And then if you play a game, especially if it's something that is familiar to them, so like we play Jeopardy, we play some sort of a chutes and ladders game, or something that we've repurposed for education where students feel comfortable with the rules and they feel comfortable with the game coming into it, then they can make some positive connections between things they already have a positive association with, and they make that positive association with their learning. So that in itself is a benefit, but really you want to be designing it to be purposeful. So you can create an anticipatory set to just get kids to buy into the learning. So it's just something fun, a fun warm activity, something that gets students a little bit excited about what they're doing. You know, this picture here has a kid on. Okay. Kid on the Wii. I mean, even if you just do that and have the kids like doing a running in place. We have somebody that. Hey. Just something to kind of get it started. It doesn't have to be the whole lesson, but just starting the game, the class off with a game. So one of my favorite activities is I like to put my iPad under the document camera and have the kids come up and play Angry Birds. And I use this to introduce the concept of parabolas and the x-intercepts. And so I have them all come up one at a time, and they're shooting it, and we're doing a little bit of discussion. But then when I transition away from playing the Angry Birds to starting to do the algebra problems, the kids are still super engaged because they've got that positive connection. They had something fun, and they have something that we can relate it to. So I say, hey, you know, like when you shot the bird and it landed over here, you know, what was that right there? And I show them the graph of a parabola on my graphing calculator. They make that connection, and just using that as a warm-up is a great way to get students into the lesson. All right. And so just having this story to shape the learning, we already talked about that a little bit, but again, is having some sort of a narrative that they can relate to, can really find purpose. And I think sometimes the kids are always, why are we learning this? What's the point of this? And if you can shape it in a story, you try and get a story that fits what it is that you're doing, then even if it's fictional, there's a reason behind it. I need to learn this so that I can escape from a volcano. I have a reason. I think one of the most popular reasons for games is to do a review activity. It's just something fun, so you're not just droning over the same information over and over again. But you putting in some competition elements and some fun sounds and imagery can really help draw the kids into the review activity. And what's good about a review activity is that it assumes that the students already know the material and you're just doing reminders. So it's not so much an instructional activity, but something just to kind of at the end of the period or just before a test, that you're pulling it back together, which is something we do naturally as teachers anyway, but we're just framing it in a fun context. The other way that you can use games is as independent practice. So you can have the students create board games or have some sort of a game where within the game, and this can be on a computer, physical or not, is that they are reviewing the questions, going through and through the gameplay are interacting with the information in some way. And just including those game elements can really help them. So, you know, trying to decide if this is good for a whole class or maybe just one-on-one, like this particular example here is a board game. You probably just have a couple of students in a group working on that, so that small group instruction can really shape around a game to help the kids to learn how to cooperate and collaborate together, whereas if you just had them work on problems together, they probably wouldn't work as well. And then you can create simulations. So one of the things that my husband does, it's really great, is he teaches history. And so he likes to help the kids to feel the lesson rather than just learn about the lesson. So he'll take his name badge and he'll blow it up really big and put it around the room. And he's doing a whole thing on Stalinism, but he doesn't tell the students. So he comes in and is like, okay, guys, we're totally changing the rules. What we're doing is not working. I talked to the principal, and we're all going to take a quiz every day, and we're going to average the scores. And you know, go up to students and be like, hey, just really need some support in enforcing these rules, and I'm just having a hard time. If you see anybody that's just not going along with it, if you could just tell me. So he's secretly creating this secret police, but of course the students don't realize that he's doing this in the context of teaching Stalinism. They think he's just reshaping what they're doing in class. And so when they get to the parts in Stalinism where he's teaching this, then you think, how could people turn over their neighbors and they do all these terrible things, but then you see kids ratting each other out in the classroom and behaving in some of the same ways, then they really start to have a deeper understanding of their learning. So engaging in, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's a fun type of activity too. I know when I was teaching English as a anticipatory set for Brave New World, I would take each of the groups of kids and make them alpha, beta, gamma, and deltas, which is really a terrible thing to do. But that's what we did, and I put them into groups, and then sort of did a jigsaw where they had to take on the character of whatever I said was an alpha or beta, gamma, delta, and it really it rings true for them. They love the role playing of it, and it really resonates with them, and they understand it's more than just reading about these different people and reading about these different roles. They own it, and then they can feel it, which makes it more tangible and sustainable too to their learning.
And coming back to what you said before is, I mean, simulations are really kind of be some of the hardest ways to implement this, because you really have to get creative and think of how all the different elements relate to what you're trying to teach. So really having some sort of a network that you can share some of these ideas and brainstorm, I think, is really important, either just being a teacher group on campus or using Twitter or something else like that. But just being brave and trying, I just think, is the first step.
Are you going to talk about some networks where people can connect with others, or?
I don't.
No,
other
not
than
in
Twitter,
this.
I don't really have any that I do in particular. And again,
Okay.
it really is going to be subject specific for what kind of simulations and things that you want to do. But I would encourage people to seek those out. I know that there's different Google community groups and wiki spaces that you can Google a lot of these and find some like-minded people. And so these particular simulations that we're talking about are physical simulations, but there are actually video game simulations where students learn history and they learn math and different things just through playing the game itself. And so remember back when we were kids, Oregon Trail was super popular. I think most of us played that, and it was a text-based where we were in simulation of being on the Oregon Trail, traveling out to Oregon in a wagon, and you have these different obstacles, and kind of in a choose-your-own-adventure style, decide which way to go. So you really get a grasp of what kinds of things could happen to you and understand it more than just telling of facts. I think that's something that was really popular, and a lot of adults today have positive associations with. So trying to provide that for our students, I think would be really positive. So, but as you do these kinds of things, I think it's important that you're making sure that all students are engaged and benefit. So when I would play, say, a Jeopardy game or review game with my class, obviously the students who are ready for the test, they're getting the answers right. They're really engaged. And then you have the rest of the class who don't feel that they're ready for the test the next day, hiding and hoping that you don't call on them. And so what ways would you try and make sure that questions are accessible for everyone, and then the ones that you are trying to help the students that you know are a little bit trickier, that it's not just students shouting out the answers and not giving time for the other students to think and process their answer. And then when it comes up that you notice some of the students didn't know that, how do you use that as a teaching moment to help that be not just a review question, but also a teaching moment? And that definitely takes a little bit of finesse and practice as you do these games, is to be aware of who your students are that need practice, extra practice, and how you're going to make sure the game really incorporates them. Swapping back and forth. And what happens when students start to lose? Sometimes that can be really demotivating, like my team's so far behind, or so-and-so is the top in the class, I'll never be able to catch her, she's so far ahead of me. What do you do? And so in some ways you need to have license to change the rules on the fly. So some of the kids will start screaming out, "Oh, that's not fair!" Like, of course it's fair, I make the rules. But really the goal here is not to play and win the game. The goal here is to learn and to include everybody. So just some things to consider as you play games in class. And then competition is not motivating to all students. So, you know, if you give a competition like, you know, we're going to all see who can read the most. So we all know who the best readers in class are. And that's going to really motivate the best readers. But the ones who are the worst readers, and you put their names up on the board, and you have some sort of a leaderboard for that, that actually can be embarrassing for them and not very motivating, as they see that they're so far below other kids. And for those of us who are competitive, we're like, oh, if I seem so far behind, I'm going to reach harder. But for other kids, that doesn't work. So I think it's really important when you think about competition to try and do competition against the student themselves and not necessarily the whole class. So talking to every kid individually and doing goal setting, it's like, okay, you're at this level, and we're going to work, and you've now made it to this level, and you celebrate that. And I think that's a really healthy way to do competition, as opposed to always like having everybody's name up on the board. That can be really motivating, again, for some of the kids, and you really need to know your kids to who's that's helping and who really maybe you want a different approach. But competition is motivating if you can compete within yourself. A lot of times when I'm playing, say, Angry Birds, I'm looking at how I get 1 star of mastery. I would like to get 3. So I'm competing against myself. I'm not competing against other players. And so I think that's something we can include in the classroom. So different types of games. I think a lot of us play these PowerPoint games. I have a really great mole game from the TV show The Mole. If you go to alicekeeler.com/mole.zip, you can download that and play it. It's super fun, but it's just taking something that they're familiar with and reframing it for education. You can play physical games with students and make that about the learning, doing the simulations like we talked about. And then you can just make some of the worksheets have gaming elements. So, you know, something where you just throw in dice that it has some element of randomness that can make your worksheet activity time more fun. Again, with competition, you do want to be careful, but setting some sort of a competition against themselves, some of their goals, can be a great way to play games in class. There are some teachers who actually play World of Warcraft, which is an online role-playing game. They actually use it for learning, but I think if you play World of Warcraft, that is a way that you can see different gaming elements that you might want to include, like how it does achievements, how it does badges. So if you look at WoW in the Classroom by Lucas Gillespie, actually has all of the curriculum online already. Edurealms.com is where he blogs at for games and education. But he actually has students actually playing WoW to learn English language arts standards. So the actual playing of games that already exist, you can put extra rules in there to help students learn your curriculum. So again, he blogs at edurealms.com. If you have the slide deck, you can actually click on that, and it is a live hyperlink. World of Classcraft is kind of the idea of World of Warcraft, but shaping it in your classroom. He's got a whole Kickstarter campaign going so that you can join in and get this curriculum for yourself so you can play games with your students. And if you're not familiar with Minecraft, Minecraft is really cool. Let me see if I can play a little bit of this video. Is it showing it? No, it's back. Let me switch what this is showing. So if you're not familiar with Minecraft, it's basically virtual Legos.
Welcome to missions.
So this student has built a mission in Minecraft. The student made all of this, and he does a screencast.
And this is the courtyard,
where he's explaining everything that he built and what type of materials he used to build it. He is creating content. That is the highest level of Bloom's taxonomy. Is you're letting a kid explore the space and they're learning, and they create something out of it. It's really a powerful tool. And so you'll see Minecraft EDU is kind of the next step from that. Minecraft is available, just any parent can purchase this for their kid. But in Minecraft EDU, there are teacher controls. So you can control how many resources they have and whether or not the students are allowed to interact with each other, if they can fly, if they can port around, if, you know, where they can dig, where they can't dig, and it just gives some classroom structure to this open game, which is really nice that they provide this educational side to what really is a very popular game, and you bring that in. Students are excited and they think you're letting us play video games, but really it's virtual Legos of building and creating and helping you take your classroom to higher levels of critical thinking. So those are all really powerful. And let me see if I can switch back to my slides. Ah, I lost it. Just scroll down. That's again with the, come here, Minecraft EDU. And then you'll see there's lots of games online that you can just bring into your classroom that you don't have to build and design. So like Dragon Box Algebra kind of tricks your students into learning algebra when they're actually having fun playing a game. And you also see things like Code Academy, which has some gamification elements in there where they earn badges and level and learn how to code JavaScript through these different websites. So these are things teachers can easily bring into the classroom to help students to learn. I know that we only have 3 minutes left, so my recommendation is that you just start playing games and see what do you learn. Play some silly games like Farmville and Angry Birds, and what I get out of those is the different types of badges and awards and how it does progress bars. You know, when I look at Angry Birds and it shows me levels of mastery, I find it really motivating. They only have 1 star, and I'm like, oh, I want to get 3 stars. So how can I challenge my students to say, can you demonstrate your learning at higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy? Can you use higher levels of critical thinking that I can give you more mastery levels? And, you know, and you can do these badges with, there's digital ones at classbadges.com. You can actually use that to award badges to your students to help, you can set up different achievements, and then they can earn those achievements, and those are things that they goal set and strive for. But you can actually just start small and just use stickers. But I think that some of the keys is they need to know what they can earn and that they can goal set for it. You don't let the badges be random, like, oh, you won the glittery unicorn badge, and they're like, what did I get that for? They should know up front what they can get the glittery unicorn badge for. You know, it's for applying glitter in an artful way to your project, and that's something that they use to extend beyond the basic requirements, and they can earn badges for some of those. They can earn badges for higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, higher levels of mastery, or they can just do some things for fun. So, is there any questions?
I want the glittery unicorn badge.
You can get the glittery unicorn badge, because if you go to classbadges.com and you do a little search and you type in Alice, they actually made a glitter unicorn badge for me, and they made one for spreadsheets, because we all know spreadsheets are fun.
Of course.
So if you'd like to award those badges, you are welcome to get them.
Excellent. So I'm going to go over and double check. I don't think that we have any questions, but if anyone does have any questions at any point of you, do you want to repeat or show your first slide real quick again so that people can,
Sure.
I mean, obviously they can go to alicekeeler.com. You make it nice and easy that way.
You gotta spell my name, so that's the trick.
Okay.
So right, I'm on Twitter at Alice Keeler, and I love to take questions and interact with people. So if you want to tweet at me, I would. I'd love to discuss more about how to use games in the classroom.
Great. Thank you so much.